The best financial decision I have ever made. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about the best financial decision I have ever made. For anyone that knows you, you probably already know this and I've already talked about it, and it's just something that I am so grateful for still even today, years after. So let's get into it. Honestly, this decision was a combination of pure luck, good timing, a great support system, my influencers and friends around me at the time, just that feeling of let's go for it. If you've already watched my video about moving out as a brown girl, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Before we get into everything about all of that, let's give you a bit of context around the time that I bought and the landscape of things. I had just returned from a 2-month trip backpacking around Europe. I didn't have all that much money. I'd just seen one of my close friends from where I was living in Bendigo buy a house herself. I was so lucky. I was actually living in it for a little while. So I saw her go through that whole process. Before I left for Europe, I found out that I was actually returning to Bendigo, so I would be there for at least another year. Let's get into how it all actually panned out and how it all happened. I hadn't planned anything about my move back to Bendigo when I was in Europe. I was obviously enjoying my trip and I hadn't really been thinking about it at all. We'll go there, we'll get an Airbnb, we'll figure it out at the time. Came back to Melbourne, I had 1 week to move. In that week, I booked a Airbnb that I would stay at for 4 weeks. And the weekend before I was starting work, me and Dad went up and we inspected 3 houses. So literally that week that I got back, I looked online to see whether there was any houses I was interested in. I contacted and booked in an inspection for 3 houses. When we went up, we saw all 3 houses and I absolutely loved the second house. Not because it was anything grand or anything, but literally just because it was quaint. It looked like it would be easy to maintain. It just had a really good vibe. I really liked the area it was in. I had actually lived in my friend's place that was very close to where that was, so I knew the area really well as well. Dad was leaning towards a 3rd house, but he was like, you know what, if you feel this way towards this one, go for it. I put in an amount and the only thing I asked for was a 3-month settlement because I had not actually organized any of my finances, which I do not recommend anyone to do. It was just something that I did and I was really lucky that things fell into place. But I do not recommend to go put an amount for a house before you've even organized your finances. I didn't lowball with the amount that I put in. I was really excited about getting that house. The amount they were asking for was pretty fair. I know in the real estate world, people say that they're always asking for an amount that's higher, so you should be lowballing. I don't know, I just didn't think I needed to. So I put in the amount that they asked for and they accepted it. And in hindsight, I actually don't mind that I did that. With the amount that things have increased, I actually got that place for a really good price. I need to talk about the next part because I am honestly so grateful for the people around me to have allowed this to happen. I was not in a great financial position at this time. I'd just come back from my travel overseas. I had the amount for the deposit because I'd actually given a solid chunk of money to my parents for something else, but also as like a savings option where I obviously couldn't touch it. So I asked for this back a lot earlier, obviously, for the deposit, and that was all okay. But then I also had all these additional fees. I think stamp duty was waived, but then there was solicitor fees and all these other things that I had to pay for. I honestly didn't have enough, and I was so lucky that my best friend was able to loan me the money and I was able to pay her as soon as the loan and everything got through. I'd started living there. I was really lucky that I had people around me that were willing to support me in that way. If I didn't have that kind of support around me, I don't know that I would have had the confidence to do it as well. In terms of how I got the loan, there was a few different options that I was researching and I learned so much during this period because there was so many ideas and options around buying a house that I did not understand and I had to really research. So one of the options I looked at was a first homeowners grant. I think this is a great option for a lot of new homeowners. It didn't work for me because the house I was looking at was a house that's an older house closer to the CBD of Bendigo. Yes, Bendigo does have a CBD. The houses that qualified for their first home owners grant were either new builds or builds that were the first sale had been built within 10 years. And those ones were in estates a bit further away, were actually more expensive than the price of the house that I was going for. When I was thinking about it, I'm like, yep, I'd save whatever amount, but then I'd also be paying more through my loan anyway. So what was the point? Because I'd be able to have a smaller loan getting this older house than have a bigger loan for a newer house that qualifies. So I didn't go with that one. There was another option and I don't know the name of this scheme, but it's where the government helps you with your deposit, but then the government owns that percentage of your house. So you can actually buy a house with as little as 5% of the amount that you need for the deposit. I think this scheme gets rid of lender's mortgage insurance. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert around all of this, and I researched all of this stuff at least 4 years ago. So I didn't feel the most comfortable knowing that the government owned a little bit of my house. I was like, I'm already getting a loan, which means I'm owing stuff to the bank, and then there's the government as well. It all just got a bit confusing and messy for me, so I didn't go with that option. I actually just went with a normal loan. I applied, they looked at all of my pay slips and stuff and said I would qualify for everything that I wanted. It all kind of went through very seamlessly. I was really lucky. I think at the time that I got the house, the interest rates were also relatively good amount. They did drop lower later on, but I think I got it for a decent amount as well. When we moved to the part of actually moving in, it happened so crazily because the day of the settlement was the same day that I moved in. Half my furniture coming from Facebook Marketplace, half of it from Fantastic Furniture, and the rest of it multiple Kmart trips. And we literally just put together my own version of a little bachelor pad. Nothing was like fancy. It was all kind of put together here and there. It created my quaint little home, and I fell in love with the place. For as long as I was there, it was like my sanctuary. I absolutely loved it. The best financial decision, but it's also one of the best decisions I made in my life so far. And it's also where my love for plants came about. Just that slow living of being able to take care of the things around you. Everything having a place and having a home. Everything happened from the point of finding the place to the point of moving in within 6 weeks. So I had my Airbnb for 4 weeks and then I extended it by 2 weeks. So I had it for 6 weeks, and everything from the point of finding the place, finances, getting everything sorted, literally getting my furniture and moving in, everything happened within the span of 6 weeks, which is absolutely unheard of. It was crazy. Given I'm claiming that it's the best financial decision I've made, I thought I'd go through some of my stats. I've owned this house for 3.5 years now. I bought this house when I was 23, when I knew nothing about property, but I bought it anyway. I was originally paying the mortgage on my own while living there, so I didn't have a rental income as well. I was paying for it myself. It made sense to me because the amount I was paying back was similar to renting out there, so I was like, well, it's actually the same amount of money that I'd be using anyway. So I actually lived in the property for almost 2 years. I then rented the property out through the agency, now rented out the property. It's been rented out since I moved out of it, so that whole time. And more recently, they've actually increased the price of the rent for the tenants that are there in line with the amount that it's been increased over there. I felt so bad about increasing it the amount it did, but it's such an interesting battle because we obviously don't want to increase prices to the point it's unaffordable, but at the same time, that's the market's going up in that way. It hasn't increased to the prices that they are in Melbourne and Sydney, so I feel okay. In the time that I've owned the place, I've outright paid off about 100k of the mortgage itself. So that was from my own earnings, putting it back into the house. And the actual house has also increased in valuation price by 67%. It has done really, really well. I was really, really lucky because the location that I bought, there seemed to be a bit of a boom after I bought it. I got in at a really good time, and the regional market here in Victoria, in Australia even, just boomed during COVID and throughout, and it's kind of stable there as well. So I was really lucky. I hadn't touched it for a little while. I didn't even think about it. Interest rates dropped, so I did refinance to get a better interest rate. Now I am using the property to help me with paying off my HEX debt and investing in another property. So it has honestly opened so many doors for me. So like I said, it's a combination of just timing, alignment, and honestly pure luck and having that feeling of just going for it. How I feel right now, I feel honestly so blessed and so grateful for alignment in terms of timing. The timing that I got in and the feelings I had at the time was a time of alignment and pure luck. I feel really, really grateful. Secondly, I'm also really proud of myself because at the age that I was and the timing, I jumped into something with a lot of unknowns because I didn't know about real estate at the time. I still am not an expert at all. It's definitely something that taught me a lot, but I'm definitely not an expert. But at the age that I was and at that timing, I took that leap of faith and it paid off. So I am really, really proud of myself for doing it at the time that I did. Thirdly, I feel like the property market market in Australia is such a safe bet when it comes to investments. In Australia, we always seem to bail out property as step number one, and real estate seems to be just the way that kind of, if you can get in at the right time, it's something that pays off here in Australia. And finally, just a little pointer for you. I'm not an expert when it comes to finances, and I'm not an expert when it comes to property, but I do believe if you are someone looking at buying property and you think you're ready to buy a place, I would strongly encourage you to think about buying regional, because honestly, the prices are decent, the places you get are decent, the amount of land you get is decent, and the rental income that you get from it is quite decent, and you can rent wherever you like within the cities that you live in. So it actually works out really well for you to be in the location that you want to be in, but still own property that is then an investment, so you're actually making money out of it. I was really lucky because the amount that I needed to get as a mortgage, I could actually positively gear the property, so I'm actually making an income out of it. So this is why I would highly recommend thinking about buying regionally if you are thinking about buying property, rather than buying in the bigger cities where it's very unattainable and very unaffordable. There was a massive deep dive into the best financial decision I've ever made, and if you had any questions about property or finances or anything like that, be sure to let me know. Put a comment down below. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I think we can figure out the answers together. Firstly, hopefully I can guide you towards experts that are around. Thirdly, I can be like that best friend that tells you to go for it, because I think there's so many thoughts in our minds that hold us back and inhibit us from making these massive decisions. But in my life, there's been a lot of times where I've kind of just gone for it and things have worked out. So I will be like that person that says, do your research and do your background checks, but honestly, go for it. Anyways, I hope you got something out of this video, and I'd love to see you back in my next video. Thanks so much for being here.